On August 2nd, 216 BC, Hannibal Barca, the world-famous Carthaginian general, in a brilliant tactical move, completely crushed the forces of the Roman Republic with what is perhaps the clearest textbook example of a double envelopment at the Battle of Cannae. And now, more than 2,000 years later, on April 6, 1941, as the gates of Cyrenaica stand wide open, desert fox Erwin Rommel writes to his wife, "It's going to be Cannae, modern style. Will it? And what even is Cannae, modern style?" Let's find out. I'm Indy Nidell, and welcome to the final episode of this North Africa mini-series. Over the past 9 weeks, we've seen how the German intervention under General Erwin Rommel has turned an Italian collapse into a new Axis attack, driving east toward Egypt. Operation Luster pulled British and Commonwealth forces out of North Africa and sent them to Greece, leaving a weak western flank. But Adolf Hitler does not care much about Africa, and Germany is busy in the Balkans and with preparations for invading the Soviet Union. So Rommel is short of many things, but he is still better off than British North African Theater Commander Archie Wavell is. And convoy by convoy, German strength grows as British strength ebbs away. All of that, plus Wavell's failure to read the signs and his underestimation of Rommel, brings us to today, the Afrika Korps in full attack. The remains of the British 2nd Armored Division are pulling back east. Benghazi is taken without a shot by the Axis powers. And Rommel is planning to surround any British forces left in the land bulge from Agadabia to Tamimi. Cannae, modern style. When we left North Africa last week, 2 Axis columns were on their way to seize Mechili, a vital crossroads linking all key positions along the coast and lying on the road to Tamimi. To the north, just south of Benghazi, Ernfried von Weckmar, leading a reinforced 3rd Reconnaissance Battalion, approaches Mechili from the west, while Schutte von Ravenstein sits at the head of almost the whole Italian Ariete Tank Division, a reinforced Machine Gun Battalion 8, and a divisional command of 5th Light Division, including Divisional Commander Johannes Streich, aiming for Mechili from the southeast. The idea is to hit the British at Mechili from both sides. A classic double envelopment. The British really need to hold Mechili, though, not only because it is a central access point, but also because a huge supply depot is here, enough to supply an entire motorized division of 10,000 soldiers for a whole month, and there is also a well. And water is a rare thing in the Sahara Desert. There is one thing missing, though, to make it modern Cannae. As for modern, I am 100% sure the Romans and the Carthaginians did not have tanks, half-tracks, and artillery. Or, well, gunpowder artillery. But while the 2 flanking forces are on their way, Rommel is missing a frontal attack, a fixing force, as military thinkers call it. Lucky for him, then, that almost the entire rest of the German 5th Light Motorized Division is still stuck between Agadabia and the port of Zuetina. As you will remember from last week, Rommel decided to unload all troops and send the vehicles to get fuel as soon as possible, cutting the downtime by taking the risk of leaving most of a whole division stranded. So, the Desert Fox still has most of the 5th Light Division's armor and much of the artillery, anti-tank guns, and AA assets just sitting around. That is about to change. Okay, some of it is, by now, the early morning of April 5th already in Benghazi attached to the Italian Brescia Division. Brescia took over Benghazi and carried out reconnaissance along the coast to free up 3rd Recon so it could march toward Mechili. At about midday, the rest of the group learns where they are going. Under the leadership of Herbert Ulbricht, Commanders of the 5th Panzer Regiment. Most of these forces are to advance over Antalat to Msus. Not Machine Gun Battalion 2, though. It is to be sent ahead on good roads, reaching Msus over Solok, to block the western approach to Msus until the tanks arrive. So now we have a three-pronged attack. Weckmar in the north, Ravenstein in the south, and Olbrich in the center. Different. Sources divide this into 3, 4, or even 5 groups, but they all come down to 3 main prongs. But how are things going for each prong? Well, let's start in the south. At 9 p.m. on the 5th, Ravenstein and his forward detachment reached Tengeder, with Ariete and Streich some 30 kilometers behind. However, Rommel ignored warnings that this track was a suicide route, and now Ravenstein and everyone behind him pay the price. The southern prong is cut off in the desert, facing serious mechanical trouble, and, by now, depending on air resupply. As the distance from the German supply dumps grows, this will cause more and more headaches. In the center, Olbrich's force splits into 2 columns and reaches Antalat and Bir el Gardabaya by 10:30 p.m. Olbrich wants to bring the 2 forces together at Msus at 8 a.m. the next morning. As for the north, things are not going so smoothly, or rather, were not. On the 4th, the day before, von Weckmar and 3rd Recon approached the Air Regima Pass and the Devil's Own, the 2nd Battalion of the 13th Australian Infantry, who are the rear guard for the British retreat. Okay, south of Benghazi, right. One feature rules the otherwise flat and dull desert landscape. A long escarpment of shale rock rises some 120 to 150 meters above the coastal plain. It is like the wall of a terrace, broken only by a few flights of steps. It is everywhere a barrier to vehicles. And if someone like von Weckmar wants to get from Benghazi inland with vehicles in tow, these flights of steps become major choke points. And of those choke points, Air Regima Pass is the easiest to cross. Well, Bill Burroughs's Devil's Own are set up right at the top with 3 companies deployed in dugouts, 1 in reserve, some artillery, and some anti-tank guns for good measure along the approach and the pass itself. 700 mines have been laid, and demolition charges have been placed too. Still, the chances of 500 or so Australians stopping 3,000 Germans who have 16 tanks are not great. It does not help that while the demolition charges are successfully blown, they go off before the Germans reach the right places. The Australians, though, truly fight like the Devil's Own, including bayonet charges straight into the advancing Germans. The howitzer and anti-tank crews also do their part, scoring direct hits. The result is that while the Aussie infantry takes 98 casualties, the German advance is stopped cold, and the entire tank company attached to 3rd Recon is taken off the board. The mines, artillery, and anti-tank guns have claimed their prizes. In spite of this, by nightfall, General Neame, British commander in Cyrenaica, is forced to order the Australian retreat. German 3rd Recon, though, only begins moving again on the morning of the 5th and closes in on Charuba during the day. So the Devil's Own have bought a half day. In the very early morning of the 6th, Rommel is in a car racing toward the column of Ravenstein and General von Streich. By 6:30, Rommel is just 25 kilometers south of Mechili. There he meets the vanguard of Ravenstein's southern push under Lieutenant Barron, part of the 8th Machine Gun Battalion. To Rommel, it is clear there is now no time to lose, otherwise the bird would have flown. So he tells Barron to take his men and push ahead. Go around Mechili and close the track to Derna. The first British line of retreat eastward is about to be cut. Not much later, Gustav Ponath, the commander of the 8th Machine Gun Battalion, arrives on the scene. It turns out that keeping unit cohesion in a night march across a featureless desert is not easy for him. Rommel has an even bolder task: go to Derna and close the Via Balbaia, the coastal road, in both directions. And that is how quickly plans change when you are Erwin Rommel. The point of encirclement along the coast is no longer Tamimi. It is now Derna, farther west. Ponath, for one, is not happy. Rommel bellows and chases us forward out of touch with the battalion across stony desert. Only 10 vehicles with us, with these against the rear of the enemy at Derna. However, if he reaches his destination, every British soldier west of Derna will soon learn what life as a German prisoner feels like. About 7 a.m., Ravenstein arrives, followed half an hour later by Streich. Rommel does not beat around the bush. He tells them he wants to attack Mechili the same day, ordering Streich to hit it at 3 p.m. Streich's response is far from excited. He simply rejects the idea, arguing that his division is spread across western Cyrenaica with all kinds of mechanical problems, and he does not have the fuel. Rommel just cuts him off and ends the meeting. While Rommel might not want what Streich says to be true, by 10 a.m. it is well confirmed. Elements, AT companies, and MG companies scattered about. Detachment Fabris stationary without fuel. Tanks unable to move since oil is too hot and thin and oil pressure too low. Area southwest, Benaya. Some lost tanks that have moved off track, some of them stationary. The air resupply efforts have grown stronger, though, and Rommel orders all available transport planes to be ready for tomorrow, the 7th. But for today, the plan to attack Mechili has to be put aside. Colonel Fabris's forces do not arrive until late evening. Ulbrich's 5th Panzer Regiment is nowhere to be found. And while Weckmar and 3rd Recon are close, communication breaks down sometime after they pass Charuba. This is a golden chance for the British. The half-day bought by the Devil's Own has caused a chain reaction, pushing the German attack back a whole day. Yet things are not going smoothly for them either. That same evening, the 3rd Indian Motor Brigade sees friendly troops coming from Mansus. It is the battered remains of the 2nd Armored Division under Michael Gambier Parry, defeated at Mersa Brega days earlier, accompanied by, drum roll please, 1 tank. Yes, 1 tank. British armor in Cyrenaica has almost disappeared, and Michael Rimington and his 3rd Armored Brigade are not coming back with the 4 or 5 tanks that remain in his unit. If you remember, he was forced to make a detour to find fuel. But that search ends without success. So he is heading for Derna, not Mechili. As a result, Mechili must be held by the 3rd Indian Motor Brigade and what is left of the 2nd Armored Brigade. In total, some 3,000 men of 2 kinds, either green like the 3rd Indian or worn out like everyone else. Those troops could use a skilled and experienced commander right about now. What about Richard O'Connor, the victorious champion of Operation Compass, destroyer of the Italian 10th Army? As you know from last week's episode, Archie Wavell has already called him back, and he has been in Cyrenaica since April 3rd. Although O'Connor refused to take over command, instead, he insisted on serving Commander Neame as an advisor rather than replacing him. Wavell has sent him to Marawa, where he joins Neame right as he is about to move his headquarters farther east toward Tamimi, away from the German advance. So late on the 6th, O'Connor, Neame, and Brigadier John Combe set off by car to reach their goal. They drive into the night, planning to use side roads to avoid being cut off by the Germans. After being stopped by military police and redirected, Neem at the wheel, in moonlight and dust, finally gets lost in the desert. We will soon see if they find their way back. As the 7th of April dawns on Cyrenaica, Erwin Rommel is in a terrible mood. Communication keeps breaking down, and the headache keeps getting worse. Where the hell are the tanks? The attack has to begin today. Rommel's day actually already began with more bad news. At 2 a.m., Fabrus's column is stranded without fuel again, though after personally overseeing the getting of fuel and escorting his artillery to their position 2 miles east of Mechili, Fabrus can finally set them up. At this point, around 6:40 a.m., Rommel orders, Mechili, Derna, decisive points today. Attack on Mechili to take place 0700 hours. Then Rommel personally sets off to find out where the hell Olbrich is. It turns out that after making good progress the first day, Olbrich and the German tanks faced a Ghibli, a desert sandstorm, rough ground, and had mechanical as well as supply problems. That is why they are still 65 kilometers southwest of Mechili. Rommel lands with his Storch, scolds them for losing their way, and personally adds that the men had been misled by a mirage. It is during this flight that Rommel's military career in North Africa, well, in general, almost ends. While searching for the Ariete, Rommel nearly lands among British troops who are signaling a landing strip. Only at the last moment does he spot the distinctive helmets. The Storch pulls away under machine gun fire and escapes, taking just one hit in the tail. But that is not even the only such story. He almost gets shot down by his own Italians since they have never seen a Storch. So he is nearly both captured and killed that day. Rommel zipping around and doing everything himself is not always a good thing. And the situation at Mechili is a perfect example. German General Friedrich Paulus will later say of Rommel, he storms around all day long with formations strewn all over the place, launches reconnaissance missions, fritters away his troops. Not one person has an overall view of the deployment, of the troops, or their battle-worthiness. And the deployment around Mechili is still not ready. The time of attack has come and gone again. Olbrich has gotten lost again, and Rommel needs to take off in his Storch again. The Deutsches Afrika Korps war diary notes, 10 hours after the already rescheduled attack on Mechili should have begun. Group Olbrich still hung back 50 kilometers, 3rd AA 60 kilometers in western direction, and the massive group strike only arrived in front of Mechili when night fell. So even Rommel has to face reality and must wait. Events are far more exciting. Near Derna, where Ponath and around 250 men have arrived to tighten the noose. They arrive just south of the coast in the morning, but cannot quite seal off the Via Balbia just yet. Remember, the British tanks meant for Mechili are here. After a fierce fight with the force grouped around that handful of tanks, toward 5 p.m., Ponath reaches the airfield at Derna. The trap has shut, and while the 3rd Armored Brigade tanks have saved some soldiers from becoming German prisoners, others run straight into a German roadblock. Ponath's men soon begin scooping up shocked British and Commonwealth soldiers from the tangle of tired troops crawling eastward in a never-ending traffic jam. Most of those who fell into Ponath's net believed they were well behind British lines and were too stunned to resist. And as Ponath sits there enjoying his success, a few lone vehicles approach. The nighttime drive with General Neem at the wheel has not gone well, as General O'Connor remembers. I felt from the positions of the moon that we were going too far to the north, and on 3 different occasions I said so, and on the last occasion persuaded Nîmes to stop. Yep, right as everything for the Germans is getting into place around Mechili for real this time. Right when the British forces are retreating east toward Tobruk. Right then, Ponath captures the British commander of all of Cyrenaica, General Nîmes, and the man sent in to fix his mistakes, General O'Connor. They drive into his roadblock. Ponath is in a fantastic mood, sending word to headquarters. Great booty of weapons, ammunition, and petrol, about 800 prisoners, including many officers and 4 generals. Though not all is rosy, since his men are also fighting off a breakout attempt at and around Derna airfield, and that is getting more and more serious. Okay, as April 8th begins, the hour of Mechili has finally come, or so Rommel hopes. By now, the old fort has been completely surrounded on all sides, with von Weckmar still some way off in the north and northeast, and 8th MG have closed off the roads to Berka and Derna to the east. Fabris and his column have sealed off the path to Tamimi. In the south, the 12th Bersaglieri motorized battalion, an elite Italian motorized unit, blocks any escape toward El Abiar. And in the west, Streich's divisional command and the rest of the available units make sure the enemy cannot run to Benghazi either. Rommel's Cannae, or what he describes as such, has taken shape. The British inside know it too. Gambier Parry and his men are trapped, but they will not go down without a fight. Rommel schedules the attack once more for 7:30 a.m. At 5:30, though before dawn, an Indian formation strikes south, hitting the 12th Bersaglieri battalion. The Bersaglieri stand their ground, firing heavily back at the troops of the 3rd Indian Motor Brigade. This breakout attempt is abandoned. Gambier Parry is not finished. He has a few more tricks up his sleeve. At 6 a.m., another group, including the lone tank, successfully slips into the gap between Fabris and the Bersaglieri, turns, and attacks the Fabris column from the rear. While this attempt is more promising, within an hour, the Italians have managed to turn their anti-tank guns and open fire at point-blank range, destroying British trucks and forcing their enemy back into the Mechili pocket. Hope famously dies last, and Gambier Parry gives it another try. Maybe pushing west toward Streich at Benghazi would be the best idea. Around 7 a.m., while the fighting in the southeast is still going on, a large Indian column sets out west. Yet here, too, the Germans manage to push them back. General Streich reportedly picks up a rifle himself, and the 20mm Mauser cannons he has do the rest. Most of the Commonwealth troops are sitting on open trucks, and Gambier Parry sees shells and gunfire tearing his men apart. So at 8 a.m., resistance stops, and white flags go up everywhere. Gambier Parry and Edward Vaughan, commander of the Obfork 3rd Indian Brigade, surrender some 1,700 men and a few hundred vehicles to the Bersaglieri. A few hundred men do get out in the confusion that follows. Meanwhile, at Derna, Ponath and his small force have been fighting British breakout attempts all night, all morning, and past noon, and are down to their last anti-tank shells and machine gun belts. But here, too, April 8th sees the Germans win. 3 Ju-52s carrying reinforcements, supplies, and more guns arrive. The British breakout has failed. And if you are asking yourself, where on earth is Rommel during all of this? Maybe you are. He is off in his plane again, still desperately trying to get Ulbricht to Mechili. He lands after the fighting is done. And there in Mechili, he finds the British desert goggles that supposedly belong to Gambier Parry, and then pushes them up so they rest at a jaunty angle, just below the eagle on the crown of his flat cap. Booty permissible even for a general, he says. a German war photographer, then takes the first pictures of the Desert Fox as the world would remember him. With the fall of Mechili and the blocking of the road at Derna, Rommel has managed something no one, not Archie Wavell, not the German High Command, not anyone, thought possible. He reconquered most of Cyrenaica in less than 2 months when everyone thought just the opening moves would take twice that long. We have seen Rommel at his best, but we have also learned some of his weaknesses. His tendency to go to the front and be right in the middle of the action can clearly lead to amazing results. But it can also lead to communication problems, dangers, and maybe disaster. Today, without their commander, the Germans managed to win. But what if Rommel had really been needed where he should have been, leading his Afrika Korps instead of being up in the sky searching for missing units? The only major British-held position between Rommel and Egypt and the Suez Canal is now Tobruk. 2 days after the Battle of Mechili, the siege of Tobruk will begin here. Mainly, the 9th Australian Division will hold the line, though many troops sent to Greece will return over the coming months to join the defenders. Rommel's victories are also Wavell's downfall. A cable from British Prime Minister Winston Churchill, arriving on June 21st after the failure of Operation Battle Axe to break the siege of Tobruk, reads, "After the long strain you have borne, a new eye and a new hand are required in this most seriously menaced theater." The new man is General Sir Claude Auchinleck. He and his actions, and what Rommel gets up to in the future, are stories for another time. For now, this trip onto the African continent has come to an end. Well, we hope you enjoyed this mini-series, made to expand on what I covered in the regular series with some more detail and some more excitement. As always, it is the Time Ghost Army that makes it possible for us to share with you the details of events such as the Battle of Mechili, yet another often forgotten chapter in the history of the Second World War. To explore the past together with us, join the Time Ghost Army at timeghost.tv or patreon.com. John Y. is the Army Member of the Week. Do not forget to subscribe. See you next time.